already established leader. There are many, many training programs out there for new leaders, for executive level leaders. And what we're looking to do is really bridge that gap between those who are established and those who just want to reach the next level. So we have different ways of doing that, and we'll walk you through those today. So I'm just thrilled you're here and taking advantage of that. Now, with that being said, we, Kirsten and myself, Kirsten, who's also on the call here, had the wonderful pleasure of attending Collision Conference. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it is a massive tech conference that happens in Toronto annually. And this was our first year back. And in that, we had the opportunity to survey many, many established and high achieving leaders, and just talking about their struggles, their challenges, the best parts of their day. And many of them echoed the exact same sentiment. And they said, regardless of the title that's in there, but their biggest challenge was always dealing with people. And we took that away, found that to be quite interesting, because at the end of the day, yes, tech is tech and we're learning to automate more jobs, but it still boils down to being a people-driven and run industry. So when we were surveying many people and we were having these conversations and saying, okay, so it's dealing with people that's frustrating you. What exactly is it about dealing with these people that's really grinding your gears, causing you stress, making you feel depleted at the end of every day? And they had this list of various topics to say, various challenges they faced. So the first was imposter syndrome. Then it came to confidence and assertiveness. So having those conversations, difficult conversations with their team, maybe speaking up to senior leadership, right? When we're in that kind of middle management, you're almost stuck in a vice where you have to manage up and you have to manage down. So that requires a special degree of assertiveness and confidence, and also understanding where that balance lies. Speaking up in meetings, as I mentioned, delegating effectively. As leaders, we tend to say, it's okay, I'll take it on, I'll take it on. So making sure that we can delegate so that the recipient understands the task, they're able to execute it well and properly, they feel good about it, and then that frees us up to actually do our own work, rather than the 30 to 40% of our day that is spent, dealing with other people's problems. Now we can reclaim some of that time back for us and for ourselves. Providing constructive feedback, that seemed to be a pain point for many people, along with managing their own resources. So as I alluded to earlier, time, stress, and then ultimately their people to make sure they're feeling empowered and taking ownership over their work. So with this list, how many of you can relate to one or more past or presently one of these challenges? Kirsten, you've raised your hand, and we have a little poll in there too, if you wouldn't mind just voting and let us know whether you've experienced any of these challenges before. It should pop up on your screen there. Yes, can definitely relate. All right, 2 for 2. That is, that's pretty telling there. And in that, how many of you have had the opportunity to either take a soft skills training course, have access to that, either through your own initiative or through something that your employer has set out for you? And we have another poll here if you want to vote for that. You have, perfect, and you took the initiative. Wonderful. That's what we like to see. Any other input there? There are many different kinds of training courses as well. So it might not have been soft skills. It could have been a different kind. So that's wonderful to see that many of you have taken the initiative to develop your own growth and learning there. So thank you. And thank you, Kirsten, for sharing that. So with having high performing and happy teams, it really boils down to 2 things, and that's self-awareness and intentional action. Those are the key factors to really building a cohesive team that's productive, but also fulfilled. We can have productive teams, but they might not be fulfilled. So we want to make sure that we're filling up both of those cups. However, the problem that we've identified is that most leaders don't have the tools to be able to improve those skills. And when we talk about improving, that could be reskilling, that could be upskilling, that could be just learning one little new nugget of information that you're able to then take away and apply in your day-to-day that makes a world of difference, right? We want to make sure we have access to those tools, but those seem to be few and far between, as we're seeing right now. And as a result, our leaders that we've spoken to are learning these hard lessons through trial and error. Now, the caveat being that there will always be some degree of trial and error in life, right? We have to test things, see if they work, how they stick. However, when you have a guideline that you can follow, it lessens that idea of risk and makes that trial and error more fun and less daunting and ominous. Now, when we look at some statistics coming to soft skills and the training and whatnot, we look at skills vacancies, and those who are looking to hire right now have identified that there are skills vacancies within the Canadian economy that equate to about $25 billion. And that was back in 2020. And that's equivalent to about 1.3% of GDP, as you can see here. And of those 35 skill vacancies, the top 20 were identified as being these soft skills, human skills, or now as they're being termed power skills, right? The things we need to take power over our collaboration, power over our conversation and communication, power over our actions. So that is a huge chunk of vacancies that just aren't being fulfilled. And within that, 77% of leaders and of employers are actually looking to bring in leaders who are already equipped in these skills and have these skills. So there's a bit of a disconnect between employers who are training and the employees who want to have their leaders already trained, right? And that's why it's so important for our leaders to be able to take the initiative to start to upskill and reskill themselves, so that when we are entering the job market, maybe we're looking for a change, maybe we're vying for a promotion to reach that new level, well, we're already set with what employers are looking for. Now, as leaders as well, retention is also part of your duties, as much as it may not be written into the job description. Ultimately, you want to be able to keep your team intact for as long and as successfully as possible. And when it comes to turnover, it is a huge hit not only to morale, but also to the organization's overall bank account. So with that being said, the detrimental effects of turnover can range anywhere from 33% to 2 times that individual's salary, dependent on their position, which is huge. And that's not just on, reaching out, finding someone else, the retraining, which are identified here as the hard costs, but also the soft costs, which are much higher. And that's the lost productivity, the errors from someone stepping in new. And as I'm sure many of us can equate to, that burnout from another leader having to put that hat on and say, well, now I'm doing 3 jobs and I was meant to do just 1. So we want to make sure we're alleviating that and not having the finger pointed at us to say, where's our team gone? Where's your team gone? Obviously, employers will do their due diligence and their research if they notice high turnover under one leader. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping people happy, healthy, and we're also protecting our own resources in doing so. Now, how we help do that is probably the burning question of the hour. And we utilize a method called the SPARK method that has over 30 years of success-driven results. And what we really focus on is a proactive and high touch approach to learning and development for individual leaders, but also for teams to come together and collaborate effectively. And that's how we look to close that gap on that $25 billion of skill vacancies, right? Now, you're probably saying, okay, that's great. We can learn something. We've taken courses, we have binders on the shelf, et cetera, but we do have the solid evidence to prove that this method works. So for example, Brian here, he found his voice and his place on a team in just 4 weeks. When we met Brian, he was brand new to the team. He came into an organization that was very, very heavily family focused, very tight knit, and he felt like he didn't necessarily have the tools or the means to be able to speak up as he would have liked to be able to contribute. Not in an aggressive way, but just to say, hey, I have some ideas I'd like to contribute. Now, for him, that was obviously a little unsettling, but he just didn't have the assertiveness to be able to take that on. After our 4 weeks of training, he was jumping in conversation, both in our training and in team meetings, as he articulated to us. We eliminated some of that us versus them mentality that had existed and was identified within the training between the office team and the field team. So we got everybody on the same page about timelines, deliverables, and that made Brian's conversations much easier with the rest of the team, both in his own department and outside of his department, to ask questions that he needed the information to speak up, to say, hey, maybe this is a better way to do this process. And all of that came full circle after those 4 weeks. And you can see here, Brian said he learned a lot. He felt more integrated with the team. He's grown more confident and he understood the whole dynamic of the team much better. So how each individual person played a part. Overall, he says he thought it was one of the best trainings that he's ever had. And he is excelling now. He's fantastic. And we're so very proud of him. Next, we look at Lanny here, and she had a massive aha moment in realizing that perhaps some of the things she was saying weren't landing in the way that they were intended to. So she figured out how to create more positive and intentional interactions in just one session. And we had the pleasure of finding this information out when we went back to run another session with her team of 35. So when we met Lanny, she was a director. She had 10 direct reports, and she had such a struggle with employee retention, with not getting buy-in from her team when she was trying to make changes, or just present a simple idea, and she was getting a lot of pushback. And that was very demotivating for her, but obviously also for the team as well. So after our one session, she realized that she could flip the script and position the way that she spoke to her team in a different way, the way that she motivated them and provided feedback. She got more comfortable with accepting and receiving feedback herself. Then she took intentional action on that feedback. She was promoted and now had a team of 35. So she was a director for a region within Ontario. And then she brought us in to host a training for her own team of 35, which was wonderful. And most importantly, that conversation continued outside of both of those trainings, so that the team had that two-way dialogue consistently moving forward. That started to become baked into their culture. So Lanny says she enjoyed learning about herself, the different types of personalities, and how to positively interact with others, along with tips for having difficult conversations. So she quite enjoyed that, and we were thrilled to see her excel that way. And finally, the final example I'll give you is Tanya here, who was promoted from manager to department manager in only 2 months. Now, when we met Tanya, she had a manager title, but she didn't have any direct reports. She had a team that worked alongside her of 7 individuals, and she was really looking to reach that next step and that next level in her career. We worked with her on an accelerated fast track 5-week self-directed Spark training, along with some one-on-one coaching. And with that, she was able to, first of all, land the promotion that she was looking for, but it went so much further than that. She limited her emotional reactions in meetings, which she self-identified as having a big issue with. Then she had those 7 teammates and those individuals that she worked alongside with actually advocating for her promotion, because she stepped into that leadership role before it was even hers. She was able to confidently enter a room with some of the senior executives that she had never had any interactions with, state her case, get the funding for the initiative she wanted to run, all by reframing and putting her initiatives into their language. She was speaking their language to get their buy-in, and that happened instantaneously. And to boot, she also negotiated a $10,000 increase in her salary. So Tanya, needless to say, was very, very happy, but she started to work her way up, and she took the initiative to be self-taught, to learn, and to develop those outcomes for herself. Now, ultimately, what we're looking to do here at Spark and what we provide our graduates with is the tools, tips, reflective exercises that generate collaboration, self-awareness, most importantly, psychological safety, and that's a much bigger topic that we'll talk about, and trust within their teams, so that we're able to have more efficient communication, higher retention, and also ultimately increase productivity with fulfillment linked in there as well. Now, for myself, I know I've just talked a lot about what we do, but I'm the founder, Kendra Johnson, of the Vend Group. And as I said, I'm so thrilled that you're here today and joining me for this session. I would refer to myself as a people enthusiast. I don't believe that we can ever be people experts, because we're continuously changing and evolving. And that's something that really drew me to this industry of professional development and training. That, it's great. It's two-sided, because as we're sharing our knowledge from the Vend Group, I'm also consistently learning, as are our trainers, about the changes in behavior and actions that people are taking, and how individuals are communicating, specifically in the workplace, but also how that then leaks into their personal lives. So I've been building and nurturing teams for over 10 years. I attended the University of Guelph here in Ontario, if anybody is familiar or has attended. Whoop, whoop. I founded the Spark program in 2018, and that had a very different vision, a different goal, I should say, and different target, and it was to work with individuals one-on-one. And what I realized was that there was so much beauty in facilitating the discussion of many different opinions, perspectives in the room, so that those individuals that I was working with one-on-one could actually apply what they were learning. They could see the concepts in someone else, in their conversation partner. So The delivery of the Spark method, although the foundations remain the same, was reimagined in 2020, and we launched our team training and our individual cohorts. So since the end of 2020, we've been able to graduate over 500 leaders from the program. We've also run countless learning sessions for teams and individuals, and continuously, as I mentioned, are learning and growing our database by bringing in knowledge experts who are able to provide so much value to our graduates and to our networks, so that that employee upskilling, learning, and resource bank is never depleted and is always kept full and fresh and new. And just a fun fact that really ties into the overall communication, working with others, and cultural piece of what we try to emphasize here, inclusivity and belonging. I've traveled to over 40 countries, and in every country, I've always looked at what is the #1 way that people connect. Is it saying hello? Is it speaking in someone's mother tongue? How are you immediately gaining that rapport with someone or building that rapport with someone so that you can find the toilets when you're abroad? It's incredibly important, and it translates into your own backyard. So that's some of the foundations that our programs are built on here. Now, Spark is, I mentioned that we do use our Hallmark Spark program here, and it is an acronym. So that's what we work through as we go through the Spark method with our trainees. And Spark is ultimately an acronym for the 5 pillars of influence, or 5 pillars, sorry, that influence behavior, motivation, and really drive communication. So when there's a change in these, the presence or the absence of one of these 5 pillars has an influence on our communication or our basic motivations to want to show up to work every day. When we work through these, obviously there's a structure to each of these 5 pillars, but we also walk our trainees and our teams through these three processes, right? So the first and most important piece to remember is awareness. And so we really develop awareness, and we'll get into this in a little bit in the training, by focusing on self and social awareness. They are both different, but we use discussion to facilitate that idea of self-awareness, reflection, and those reflective exercises. And again, I'll walk you through that process at the end of our training today. Next, we take action on that awareness. It's great. It's one thing to have the awareness, but if we're not taking intentional action on it, then what's the point? So with that action piece, we carve out time so that these concepts, these ideas can actually be put into practice time and time again. So we're creating those positive habits. And then finally, we take accountability for those actions and for that awareness, whether that's in going through the cycle again, right? An action didn't work out, so we look at the awareness piece and go back through, or we say we've taken action, now we're aware, how are we holding ourselves to this? How are we creating champions both for ourselves and within our teams to make sure that everything we've learned is actionable and is continuing to move forward, both ethically and morally. Now, looking at our 5 pillars here, I want to walk you through what the Spark method stands for and what we're all about, give you insight into each of the pillars so you can truly understand what we're trying to pull out, what the objectives are of each of these 5 key elements. So the first pillar of Spark is security, and this is the most important and fundamental piece. And we've heard through countless psychologists about the importance of security, right? We talk a lot now in leadership about psychological security, but it goes a lot deeper. We can get quite granular with it when we look at emotional and mental security, financial security, and physical security and insecurity, and how that changes our motivations and our behaviors. It's one thing to be able to identify that in someone else, but as a leader, it's incredibly important to be aware of your own influences. When you're aware of your own influences and how you behave and how you show up, only then can you understand how you're influencing others. So we focus on, in the security pillar, really getting comfortable with what's influencing us, assessing patterns, understanding where we're acting versus where we're reacting, maybe out of emotion, maybe out of frustration, right? All of these pieces. We want to make sure that we're self-aware so that we can show up for our teams powerfully and we can act in those engagements and not react. The second pillar we get into is praise. And this is a very, common, we all talk about in leadership, we have to praise our team, praise a team. However, there are right ways to praise, and we're all guilty of the wrong ways to praise. And they're very simple, easy mistakes to make, but they can have quite large effects on the motivation of our team members. Now, when you look at this graph here, and this is just a quick little summary to give you a visual representation of some of the things we cover in this praise pillar, but you look at the left-hand side here and we have the amount of praise. There's not enough, which is basically the absence of, and there's too much, which is the presence of an excess. And then on the bottom axis here, we have quality. So there's demotivating praise and there's also motivating praise. Most of these things are done unintentionally and subconsciously. So the intention of the praise coming through isn't always felt by the recipient unless we're cognizant of it and aware of what we're saying. So when you look at the top left quadrant here, we have too much and demotivating, which comes off as a little disingenuous, right? If we're constantly pumping somebody's tires, we're throwing out praise for things that are very basic. Perhaps we're throwing out praise when somebody's just met expectations and hasn't exceeded them. Then it gets to be diluted when we're actually trying to provide meaningful praise. We want to make sure that we're being specific, we're providing praise and attaching it to something rather than just throwing it out willy-nilly because it's what we think we should do. The bottom left-hand quadrant here, we have not enough praise and demotivating, and we're just going to call a spade and say that that person is probably about to quit, right? We want to feel valued, like what we're doing, we're showing up, we have purpose, we're fulfilled, and we're contributing to an overall vision and goal. When we show up to work every day and we leave and feel like nobody notices the work that we do, well, that can be incredibly demotivating. And most individuals will seek an environment where they can have that support, they can have that praise and that recognition. The top right-hand quadrant here, we have too much praise and motivating, which is, all things considered, we would think wonderful. But this can have adverse effects in that for the recipient, it can create a bit of a superiority complex, right? So when it finally comes time to provide some constructive feedback, and that person has been told that they're wonderful, they're doing everything perfectly, and maybe they have been, but that they are the shining star, and you provide that feedback after 5 years, and maybe under new leadership, something might not be perfect, then that can be a harder fall from grace, right? So we really want to make sure that we're tempering and balancing and providing just enough praise so we don't create this superiority effect. And then finally, the bottom right-hand quadrant here, we have not enough praise and it's motivating, and that individual is likely just meeting expectations. So every so often they get the pat on the back and they say, okay, you know, I'll complete my tasks for today, and then I'm going to close my laptop at 5 and go home. And that's wonderful. We want people to meet our expectations, but ideally we would love to see people exceed because they want to, not because they have to. So then we look at the middle star there, and the acronym that you can remember is DUST for this type of praise, where it's just enough and it is of, you know, the right quality, not too motivating, not demotivating. We want to make sure it hits that middle spot, and that's direct, unconditional, specific, and timely. So direct, from one person to another, we're providing that praise directly to that individual because, you know, we don't want to have that go by way of a third party. It's unconditional, meaning there are no caveats, there's no stipulations. It's just, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for completing this. You've done a fantastic job with X, with the sales reports, whatever that might be. And with that ties in the idea of specificity, we want to make sure we're linking it to a specific task. When people understand what they do really well, they won't regress and they won't do it differently. So now you've set that expectation of the level that they should achieve, and it feels good to take ownership over a certain skill. Now they know that what they're good at, and we all want to know what we're good at. And finally, it's timely. We don't wait a year to provide that praise. As timely as possible, we're able to provide that so that, you know, they can continue to feel good after they've just done an excellent job on something, right? Linking it to a specific task means making it timely. Next, we look at acknowledgement in our 5 key pillars here. And acknowledgement is not to be mistaken for praise, although sometimes they do end up getting interchanged, and they are actually very different ideas and concepts. Now, aside from simply letting people know that you value their contributions or that they're just humans, they're there acknowledging somebody else's presence, it also means understanding what motivates people to show up every single day, what incentivizes them to strive for more, to reach for that, you know, that gold star, that vision that we've set as an organization and as leaders, to say, here's our goal, here's our objective, here's how we're going to get there, and we're looking to motivate you in the best way for that individual. So when we look at this quote here from the Business Council of Canada, a survey that they ran in 2021 stated that opportunities to advance, feedback, meaningful work, increased guidance, keep that one in mind, and improved work-life balance were actually listed as key factors by new hires, even before their salary expectations. Now, that can change based on the season of their lives, based on seniority. However, it means that the emphasis and onus is on all of the other things that people are getting, the learning, the development, the ability to be supported before they're looking at salary expectations. As long as those basic needs are met, then they're looking for these other things. That's not to say it's the same for everyone, right? As I alluded to, it depends on the individual. So when we're able to understand whether someone's motivated by bonuses or by a simple thank you card, we're really able to build those strong relationships, strong, loyal, respect-based relationships that keeps a team cohesive, motivated, and showing up every day to work towards that common goal. Next, we look at respect. Now, culture and values are a seemingly recent trending topic, but there are so many different caveats and opportunities to improve. And as you can see from this meme here, one does simply not cut and paste culture and values, and we see this all too often, unfortunately. Culture and values plastered all over the walls, culture and values on the website, but where's the action that's being taken on that culture and those values, right? The companies that we've worked with that create strong vision statements, strong departmental vision statements that understand the values, but most importantly, that the team understands what those values mean and how they demonstrate them well, are those that show up, they take intentional action, they work together as a team, and they move one step closer towards overall success, whatever that looks like for them. When those leaders are able to reduce that turnover, they gain that loyalty and that respect by buying into a purpose, right? A vision. We stand for something and we act on our values. The biggest way to lose respect is to have values, to boast about them, but then to do the opposite, right? It doesn't look good in the eyes of the employee. The clients can feel that, whoever they might be. We want to make sure that we're acting intentionally in alignment with the values of the organization and helping understand what our own personal values are. So we can say, this is totally aligned with my values. I'm here, I'm bought into this organization. Or maybe, hey, this organization, I don't really align with them and their values. So I'm going to find elsewhere, somewhere where I do align with their values. And that's okay too. It's better to understand rather than have the friction of, I just don't understand why I don't love it here. Next, we look at knowledge. And finally, the final pillar in our Spark method here. And knowledge is actually quite a vast topic because it encompasses so many different perspectives from the mere definition, right? We can go many different directions depending on what knowledge means to us as individuals in different contexts. But the three key takeaways here that I want you to remember as leaders when you're doing training and development with your own teams, when you're delegating, when you're bringing somebody on as a new hire and onboarding, are what you know, what you know, right? So we have technical knowledge, we know what we know about ourselves, and we know the basic things about other people. Maybe we haven't asked them too many questions, but we have a basic understanding of that individual that we're speaking with. The next is we know what we don't know, right? So the first piece is the knowledge. We have that locked down. The next piece is the learning. So we know what we don't know. I know that I need to get more proficient in automations. I know that I need to, write more. I know that I need this specific technical training. And when we're able to identify the things that we can learn, it makes seeking out those learning opportunities and understanding what those developments are much easier. But the final piece and where the magic happens and what we really focus on, and the thing that I love the most is the discovery piece. And that is that we don't know what we don't know. And it's through the self-reflection, it's through exercises, it's through learning, opening yourself up to different perspectives, and it's also through networking and diversifying your opinion through different discussions and conversations that we learn about what we don't know, We discover things about ourselves, we discover things about others, whether that's our teammates, maybe then we apply that to our families, to our friends. We start to see patterns that exist within others. Right? So this discovery piece is what learning and development really helps to unlock and to unleash. And that within this knowledge pillar is a huge aha moment and one of the most beautiful things to watch as we move through the Spark method and the course. Now, I told you that there were 3 ways that we go about doing this and we execute on the Spark method. So the first is creating this awareness. And that starts with reflection, discussion, and then moving into the application piece. So you see the chart here, the builder and maintainer chart. This is an example of a chart that we have with one of our clients and their team breakdown for one of our personality partners. Now, in each of our 5 pillars, we run personality assessments. And as you can see, it's a scaled approach. So we don't believe that anybody should be boxed, completely labeled, because we have the ability to change, we have the ability to grow, learn new skills, but we are predisposed to be more of one than the other. So what's our baseline? And that's what we identify here. And in knowing that, we can see where we fit in on the team, where other strengths lie, where we can lean on our team to support our weaknesses. So we work through that in personality or self-perception exercises, as we like to call them. Then we analyze and dissect the results. We have discussions about those. We talk about individual contributions. We talk about collectively how that puzzle gets put together. And then we create a plan to fill in the gaps. And for the individuals who aren't necessarily working in a team environment, that helps us, again, just open our eyes to the different personalities that exist. So you might come in as VP of sales and you'll be talking to a founder of a tech company. And now you're getting that perspective from somebody who's in a different industry, in a different position, and you're getting those different experiences. And then when you meet that person down the road, because they might have similar traits, you understand, you're already in their head, you understand how they think, maybe how they operate, and you can start from that baseline of understanding and continue to get curious and ask more questions. Next, we look at action. So as I mentioned, action is the most important piece next to awareness, because we can be aware all we want, but unless we actually act on it, then it's all for nothing. So we encourage and inspire action in each session through the practical application of concepts that happen in a controlled environment. So we practice this through exercises, as I mentioned, through discussions, through journaling and reflective workbook questions. And when we're able to do this, we can co-create solutions together, which also helps us take accountability and ownership over our own learning. And watching that happen as we move through different exercises and people are able to come up with these solutions in real time, then they can execute on them. We come back, we meet, we talk about what we've executed on, and then we take accountability for that to say, yes, this worked, I will continue to do this, or this happened, here was the next step, here's what we do next, moving forward in the next piece to build on that skill. And finally, our accountability. So repetition and practice create positive and permanent habits. As we've all heard, it takes 21 days to develop a habit and 91 days for it to become a behavior. And so with this, we extend our sessions rather than doing a 1-day, half-day workshop. We really try to extend so that we, as I mentioned with the action piece, we have the time to take it away, to implement it, and then to bring it back and have discussion about it. So you're not being left to your own devices. We can try it in the incubator, control it, and then we're able to see that it works. It's successful, and then we go out and that's something that we practice day in, day out. Now with accountability, we also come in as the grandparent effect, something that allows you to have a third party opinion, somebody who's objective, and a group of peers who are also objective, who are able to provide you with solutions and their perspectives, right? We can have constructive conversation about that. We're able to strengthen relationships, both within our own cohorts and perhaps then being able to extend those networks beyond those individuals that we meet within our cohorts, right? And we can have that diversification of perspective. It's also a healthy source of external motivation. Rather than the you haven'ts or you shoulds, we're able to say, oh, you did that this week? Okay, I'm gonna go try that now this week moving forward because I see that it was successful for you. So it gives us that confidence to take that little jump, try out different things, and really put these concepts into practice. Now, from the time you woke up this morning until now, you've probably engaged with at least 5 different people. And from the time you woke up this morning until the time you go to bed this evening, studies show that you'll have engaged with anywhere from 8 to 23 different individuals And those would be meaningful interactions. So that looks like spouses, kids, friends, colleagues, the barista, right? Maybe you go to the grocery store and the clerk checking you out, you're having a conversation with them. That also comes with different beliefs, perspectives, behaviors, conversations. So we have to be fluid, we have to adapt. And that's why many leaders struggle with this idea, right? Because we're constantly adapting to different individuals and different perspectives. And by mastering that, by understanding how you adapt and how you move through your day, helps lessen any friction that you might find in any one of these engagements. So it's incredibly important, again, to look inward, to understand how you communicate, how you behave, before we look outward and say, well, this is a stressful interaction or this person's difficult. We really want to understand the why, the where they're coming from, and then be able to action that moving forward. Now, as I mentioned, we operate with team trainings, but we've really seen vested interest in individuals wanting to take control over their own leadership, their own growth, and their own development. Sometimes employers don't have the resources to be able to provide this training, and that's okay. We understand, especially with what we've gone through in the past couple of years. But we decided to make learning and development more approachable for the individual rather than having to wait for their employer to initiate any kind of training. So with that, we've condensed our foundational Spark method training into 5 weeks, where we're able to all sit together as a cohort, as individual leaders, and work through the 5 modules that we went through today, right? So security, praise, acknowledgement, respect, and knowledge. We go through one weekly, have the opportunity to take it away, come back and apply it and discuss it. The program structure of our Spark Leadership Incubator, which is a safe space for growth, conversation, and discussion, will have 1.5 hour training sessions. So that's 5 weeks at 1.5 hours. We'll also have a free office hour where it's basically an open forum discussion. Our leaders can come in, they can talk about any questions they might have, or maybe it's just a, hey, I needed a break from work and I really wanted to have a chat with some nice people. That's okay too. The floor is open and we can discuss whatever is on your mind. Next, we'll have a one-on-one 15-minute introductory call, along with something new that we've implemented and that we do for our team trainings, which is a 45-minute call, and that's a one-on-one with your trainer, to have a very intimate, solutions-oriented conversation. You can bring whatever you want to the table, whether it's materials-based or just a struggle you're having, or maybe just to talk about things that are going really well, but you have that available to you. You have full access to the Vend group community. You'll receive a Spark Leadership and Soft Skill Training Certificate of Completion. You can put that on the wall. You can put it on your LinkedIn. You can just, look at it or bury it in your inbox, whatever you want. It's yours to do with as you please. But finally, and most importantly, you're able to network with peers, people who are established leaders who are looking for that professional development paired with personal development and can help support you on your journey long after this course is finished. Although we hope you'll come back and take advantage of more resources, you now have that support system that can motivate you and drive you moving forward. Now, with that, because we've had such high demand, we are looking to start on Wednesday, August 24th, running through until Wednesday, September 21st. Based on the feedback that was provided in the surveys, 8:30 a.m. until 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time was the preferred time for training. Gives you the opportunity to get it in first thing in your day and move along, and that will be every Wednesday morning. So the full time investment, because we know that time is precious, is 12.5 hours of training. And recordings will also be provided to anybody that's not able to make it through those training sessions. Most importantly, we want to make sure you have access to all of the materials you need, and we can also catch you up one-on-one if need be to make sure you're in the loop and prepared for our next session. Now, as I mentioned, we really want to make training approachable. And while we're providing the same live high-level training experience, so this Friday, up until this Friday, we're offering an early bird special on our 5-week incubator. So that's $19.97 up until Friday, August 19th. And you can reserve your spot today with a $500 deposit. We were thrilled that even before launching, 2 out of the 12 spots have been committed. We like to keep it small and intimate so that everybody has the opportunity for discussion. So we're really looking forward to having a very strong, cohesive group join us the beginning of summer and moving into the fall. And after August 19th. The price will go up to $2,500. So just keep that in mind for yourselves, any team members that you might have. We'd love to hear from you by Friday, August 19th. So this coming Friday. And if you are interested, you're welcome to type me in the chat box and we'll send you the application form. You can open your email browser or your email client. You can put in hello@vengroup.com and use the subject Spark Leadership Incubator, hit send. If you want to write us a little note, we'd be happy to read that too, but we will get in touch with a time to connect with you. And then finally, as we live in 2022, we've all seen this funny little drawing on the right-hand side at the bottom. It's become our lives. You can also scan the QR code and it will take you to the application page where we'll reach out for a discovery call. So again, I just want to thank you so much for showing up today. I hope you've walked away with some tidbits of information. We really hope to see you in the Leadership Incubator for yourselves, for friends, anybody else that you know, family. And I'll now stop recording and open the floor up for any questions, comments that you might have.